Black billionaire's mother pretends to be a maid and tests son's wife. What she discovers shocks everyone. Before we begin, I want to know where you're watching this story from. Leave a comment below telling me your city or even your country. I love knowing how far these stories are reaching. And if you're a fan of emotional love stories full of twists and turns, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That way, you help the channel grow and stay up to date with all the new stories. Let's go on this journey together. The Bradford household was a kingdom of luxury. The Persian rug in the entrance hall, the dark wooden furniture, and the golden frames on the walls oozed wealth. But deep down, all Angela felt was a void in her soul, a distant echo of her humble past and the struggles she faced to reach that luxury. She was now there, disguised as a simple maid, wearing a spotless white uniform that made her almost unrecognizable. Yet, her commanding presence didn't go unnoticed. Angela had always known how to carry herself and stand tall, even in the face of adversity. She was there to observe, to understand her daughter-in-law, Elena, to figure out the motivations of the young woman who had married her son, Liam, the millionaire CEO. Elena was beautiful, with fair skin and straight blonde hair, her eyes deep and restless. Her smile was a mask, hiding insecurities and fears that Angela knew were far more complex than they appeared. Angela observed Elena during a formal dinner, where high society guests indulged in shallow conversations about business and status. But in the corner of the room, the tension between Elena and Liam was becoming unbearable. Angela silently watched from a distance. It was clear that something was wrong. The cold glances they exchanged were a fragile mask over a relationship on the verge of collapse. Liam's voice, usually so calm and composed, overflowed with a frustration Angela never imagined seeing in her son. "I don't understand, Liam," Elena said, her voice trembling as she tried to keep her frustration in check. "I try to fit in, to be perfect for you and your family, but nothing is ever enough." Liam sighed, running a hand through his short blonde hair. "I never asked you to be perfect, Elena. But you need to stop hiding. I'm not that guy. I don't expect you to become someone you're not." Angela felt the weight of his words echoing through the room. She knew what her daughter-in-law was going through. Growing up in a wealthy family, surrounded by relentless expectations, was an invisible prison. But Elena's pain ran even deeper. Angela could see it in her eyes, the real battle of a woman lost in her own reflection, trying to become someone she thought she had to be, instead of who she truly was. I just want to be enough for you, Liam," Elena murmured, her eyes filling with tears. The word enough cut Angela like a sharp blade. She knew all too well what it meant to feel insufficient. Her heart tightened, but she remained still, knowing it wasn't the time to intervene. She kept watching silently, an invisible spectator to an emotional drama unfolding before her. But the surprise was yet to come. As Elena tried to pull herself together, she stepped toward Liam. But instead of reaching out for reconciliation, she lightly pushed him, the tears now streaming freely down her face. "You don't understand me, Liam. You don't understand the pressure I feel every day to be someone I don't even recognize anymore." Her voice was filled with pain and restrained anger. Angela felt the tension in the air. Things were spiraling out of control, and she knew she had to step in. Her daughter-in-law, seemingly perfect on the outside, was falling apart inside. Now more than ever, Angela needed to truly understand who Elena really was. She couldn't let Liam, her only son, be consumed by a woman who couldn't even face her own insecurities. Before anyone could react, Angela approached Elena with a firm gaze. Elena turned, surprised by the maid's presence. "Are you all right, dear?" Angela asked with an almost surreal calm, a gentle smile on her lips. But her eyes, those eyes held far more wisdom than she let on. Elena, still teary-eyed, stepped back slightly, trying to hide her weakness. but her vulnerability was clear. Yes, I'm fine, she replied, though the falseness was obvious. Angela studied her for a few more seconds, absorbing everything she could about the young woman. She knew Elena's facade of perfection hid much more than anyone realized, but she also knew this might be the only chance to finally get to know the woman her son had chosen as a wife. And maybe it was the only chance to find out whether she was there out of love or just a desperate need to be accepted. What Angela discovered that night would change everything, and she was ready to uncover the truth behind Elena's carefully crafted mask. The night was calm, but the tension still hung in the air. Angela quietly moved to the side of the room while Elena, visibly shaken, slipped away into the mansion's garden, trying to avoid more curious eyes. She felt as if she were on the edge of a cliff. The cool Los Angeles breeze brought no relief from the storm in her mind. She had taken refuge in a secluded corner near one of the garden's fountains, where shadows surrounded her. She felt alone, completely lost behind the high walls of the mansion that, despite all its luxury, couldn't protect her wounded heart. Angela watched from a distance, but she knew this moment was crucial. She couldn't just let the young woman drown in loneliness, especially with so many unanswered questions around her. Disguised in her flawless uniform, she walked calmly toward Elena without drawing attention. She could see the weight of Elena's pain in her posture, how hard she was trying to keep it together. Tears were on the verge of falling, but Elena held them back. "You don't have to hide, dear," Angela said softly but firmly. Elena, surprised, turned around, startled. Who are you?" Elena asked, still in shock. Her expression showed exhaustion, and her eyes were full of disguised despair. "I'm just someone who understands how you feel," Angela replied, her eyes making it impossible for Elena to escape the sincerity in her tone. "Sometimes the pain is easier to carry when someone truly understands us, without judgment." Still wary, Elena took a step back. "Understand? How could you? You have no idea what it's like to be here, surrounded by all this wealth, and still feel empty." Angela stayed silent for a moment, letting the young woman express herself. She knew exactly what Elena was feeling, and more than that, she knew how to help her. But she didn't want to reveal herself just yet. It wasn't the right moment. "Sometimes, what we want most is something simple, to be enough for someone," Elena continued, her voice shaking. "But no matter how hard I try, it never seems to be enough for him, or for this family." Angela stepped forward, her words flowing naturally. "You know, dear, what you're going through isn't unusual. We all go through moments when we feel we're not enough. But what you don't realize is that this feeling comes from within you. It has nothing to do with what he or anyone else expects." Elena looked at her confused and asked more urgently, "Then what do I do? I feel like a fraud. I don't know who I am anymore." Angela looked at her with empathy, her eyes filled with wisdom gained from a life of hardship and growth. She moved a little closer, speaking with more resolve. "True strength doesn't come from pleasing others, Elena. It comes from allowing yourself to be who you really are, without hiding behind expectations." A silence settled between them. Elena seemed to be processing the words as if she had never considered that perspective before. It was as if, for the first time, she was seeing a light at the end of the tunnel of her insecurities. "But what if I don't know who I am?" Elena murmured, her voice now openly vulnerable. "You will, dear. But first, you need to stop being so hard on yourself. Being perfect for others was never the right path. The only one who can give you peace is you, by accepting that you are enough, exactly as you are." Angela was reaching deeper into Eleanor's heart, with a quiet but powerful presence. But before she could say more, Eleanor looked at her with a confused gaze and a flicker of hope in her eyes. She wanted to believe, but was still afraid. "Do you think I'm being naive?" Eleanor asked, her expression vulnerable, a mix of distrust and longing to be understood. Angela took a deep breath and with a barely visible smile said, "No, dear. I think you're beginning to see who you really are, and believe me, that's more than enough." Elena didn't know how to respond. She felt a connection she had never expected with that woman, who seemed to know more about her than anyone else. Something in her began to open. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she might actually be strong, despite everything life had thrown her way. I don't know what to do with this, but thank you," Elena said with a sigh, still trying to process Angela's words. Angela smiled gently, and before Elena could ask anything else, she turned to walk away. "You don't need to do anything right now, but remember, strength is not the absence of weakness. Real strength is knowing when you need help." Angela walked away silently, leaving Elena to reflect on her own, but now with a thread of hope. Something had changed inside her, and Angela knew she had just planted the seed of something deep within her daughter-in-law's soul. The afternoon sun began to hide behind the hills of Los Angeles, casting a golden light over the Bradford mansion. The atmosphere was calm, but Angela's heart was racing. She knew something needed to be said, something that had been buried for too long. The house seemed silent, but tensions were high. Elena, now calmer after her conversation with Angela, had retreated to her room. And Liam was in the study, the door slightly ajar, his shoulders tense, as if he were battling a sea of thoughts. Angela couldn't wait any longer. She had already given her daughter-in-law space. Now it was time to confront her son. She didn't know what else he might be hiding. She didn't know how far his frustration with the marriage might go. She approached the study door, took a deep breath, and walked in unannounced. Liam was leaning over his desk, eyes fixed on some documents, but the tension in his body was palpable. When he saw her enter, he didn't move. He just looked up with a tired expression. "Liam, we need to talk," Angela said, her voice firm, but carrying the gentleness only a mother could have. Liam let out a deep sigh, raising his head to look at her with exhausted eyes. "What now, Mum? What more do you want from me?" Angela didn't flinch at Liam's coldness. She approached his desk, crossing her arms and fixing him with a penetrating gaze. "I want to know what's going on with your marriage. You're distancing yourself from Elena. I can see it. What's the truth, Liam?" The silence that followed was thick, and Liam took longer than expected to answer. Finally, he looked at her with a worn-out expression. She doesn't understand, Mum. She can't understand what I really need." Angela frowned. "What do you really need, Liam? You married her, you chose this life, but now you're pulling away. Are you hiding something?" Liam stood up abruptly, walking to the window and staring out at the horizon. His frustration was overflowing. "You don't understand, Mum. All of this, it's more complicated than it looks. I love her, but she's not willing to fight for us. She'd rather live in this superficial little world while I'm trying to hold everything together. She hides behind her insecurities, and I can't deal with it anymore." Angela stayed quiet for a moment, absorbing Liam's words. She knew her son, but she hadn't realized he was this lost. He seemed completely out of control, but his pain ran deeper than he wanted to admit. It wasn't just Eleanor who was lost. Liam was too. "Do you think money and status will fix everything, Liam?" Angela asked, her voice soft but sharp. Do you think that's enough to keep a marriage going?" He turned around abruptly, his face filled with anger and confusion. "You don't understand. Nothing is enough for her. Nothing is enough for me. I'm being forced to be someone I'm not, and she doesn't see it. She only sees the image of a perfect life and ignores what really matters." Angela's heart tightened at hearing her son's pain, but at the same time, she knew he was wrong. He was blaming Elena for his unhappiness without realizing that part of the blame was his. He had become so entangled in the expectations of his family and the standards of his luxurious life that he was starting to lose himself in the process. "Liam." She took a deep breath and moved closer. "You're losing what really matters. Love isn't about being perfect or living up to expectations. Love is about accepting the other person, with all their flaws. And you need to look inside yourself to realize that." He looked at her, his hardened gaze softening just slightly. I just don't know what to do anymore, Mum. I've tried everything, but she seems more distant every day. I don't know if I can keep going like this. I don't know if I should." Angela felt a deep pain hearing that. She knew her son's marriage was on the verge of collapse, but she didn't know if there was still something that could be done to save it. There was so much love there, but also so much pride and fear. But what Liam said next made Angela breathe even deeper, a heavier weight settling in her chest. Liam hesitated, his gaze now a little more vulnerable. "I've thought about giving up, Mum. I've thought about looking for something or someone that makes me feel alive again." Angela felt as if she'd been struck by lightning. Those words, that revelation, left her speechless for a moment. What was Liam saying? He was distancing himself so completely from Elena that he was now thinking of looking elsewhere for what he already had at home. She looked at him, trying to process the weight of his words. "Liam, you can't hide in someone else to fix your problems. That won't bring you peace, son. You're only going to hurt yourself even more." Liam looked more distant than ever, his expression blank, as if searching for answers he couldn't find. "I don't know what to do." "I really don't," he said, his voice breaking. Angela, in a moment of clarity, spoke from the heart. "You need to face your own fears, Liam. Only then will you discover what truly matters. The truth won't go away, but you have to be willing to hear it." The silence that followed was heavy, and Liam finally sat back in his chair, as if the weight of what he had revealed had drained the last of his strength. Angela didn't know if he was ready to listen, but now, more than ever, she knew something had to change. The truth was in plain sight, but the question was, how far were they willing to go to face it? Night had fully arrived. The Bradford mansion was filled with sophisticated guests, all dressed in their finest clothes for a gala dinner, celebrating the family's business and accomplishments. The grandeur of the event reflected the perfection the Bradford family tried to maintain in their public image. But deep down, something was broken, something that could no longer be ignored. Angela was there, once again in disguise, but her eyes, now determined, were far from those of a simple maid. She had a purpose, and she knew the time to act had come. She could no longer remain in the shadows. In the distance, she spotted Elena, who was talking with other guests, but her smile was forced, a mask that couldn't hide the insecurities Angela now knew so well. As the event went on, Angela was alert to every word, every movement. Elena seemed more distant than ever, and that deeply troubled her. She knew she needed to step in, needed to do something to change the course of things, but what she didn't know was that this would be the moment of a revelation that would shake everyone around, exposing all the secrets. When Elena noticed Angela approaching, she gave a nervous smile, as if trying to maintain appearances. "Are you okay? Are you enjoying the party?" she asked, trying to sound friendly, but her eyes didn't match her voice. "I need to speak with you, Elena," Angela said, her words heavy with a seriousness that made Elena immediately realize something was about to happen. A wave of anxiety washed over her, but she tried not to show it. Without another word, Angela firmly took Elena's arm and led her to a more secluded corner of the mansion where the noise of the party couldn't reach. Elena followed, unsure of what to expect, but feeling the weight of the moment. When they reached a small room decorated with golden mirrors and red flowers, Angela turned and faced her daughter-in-law. "I'm not who you think I am, Elena," Angela said, her voice sounding stronger than she expected. It was a shock, something she could no longer keep hidden. Elena took a step back, confused. "What's going on? What do you mean by that?" Angela looked deeply into Elena's eyes, and that was the moment the truth finally came out. "I'm Liam's mother, and you've just been tested." The shock was immediate. Elena, who had worked so hard to maintain a perfect life, was now faced with something she never could have imagined. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and she froze for a long second, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. The heavy silence between them was broken only by the distant sounds of the party. You're Liam's mother?" Elena stammered, her voice choked with surprise. You were watching me this whole time?" Her question came out more as an accusation than a doubt, and Angela could see the pain her words were causing. "Yes, I was. But not out of cruelty, Elena. I needed to know if you truly loved my son, or if you were just after what money and status could give you. I needed to know if you could love him for who he really is, without hiding behind your own insecurities," Angela said, the tension rising in her voice. Elena's expression shifted from surprise to anger. She looked stunned, but at the same time, something inside her had broken. "You used me as some kind of test, as if I were a lie waiting to be exposed. And now what? Are you going to judge me for not being good enough for your son?" Elena's accusatory tone made Angela feel the weight of her actions. But she couldn't regret it. She needed Elena to see the truth. "I'm not judging you. I'm trying to understand, just like Liam is trying to understand. But you need to be honest, with him and with yourself." Angela paused, her gaze now softened by concern. "The truth is, you're both losing what really matters. Love can't be a performance, Elena. It has to be real." Elena, stunned, took a step back, and Angela saw that the young woman was beginning to drown in a mix of emotions. She seemed to be crying inside, but at the same time, her anger and frustration kept her from showing weakness. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do anymore," Elena murmured, nearly in despair. The pain was evident in her voice, and Angela saw, right then, a broken woman. A woman who, despite all the luxury, was still searching for something that money could never give. Angela looked at her for a moment, sensing that this was the chance to change everything. "You have to be honest with Liam. There's no point in hiding who you really are, not from him and not from yourself. Love demands truth, Elena, and you need to be strong enough to face it." Silence filled the room, and the tension between the two women was palpable. But before she could say anything else, Elena abruptly turned around, leaving Angela alone with her own thoughts. What would happen now? Still in disbelief, Elena walked out of the hall with hurried steps, not knowing whether she was running from Angela or from herself. Angela watched her leave, knowing that what she had just done would change everything. But one question still lingered. Would Elena be able to face the truth and fight for her love, or would it be easier to let everything fall apart? Elena walked through the mansion's hallways, still stunned, with Angela's revelation echoing in her mind. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of the truth were piling onto her shoulders. The party continued downstairs, but she could no longer focus on anything superficial. Her world was collapsing, and she felt like she was about to lose everything. She had gone to her room, trying to isolate herself, but the solitude felt more suffocating than ever. She looked in the mirror and saw the reflection of a woman who, for so long, had tried to be someone she wasn't. The perfectly applied makeup, the neatly styled hair, the forced smile. Everything now seemed like a facade. Elena stepped away from the mirror and threw herself onto the bed, closing her eyes, trying, but failing, to quiet the storm brewing inside her. I'm a fraud, she murmured, her words barely audible but filled with deep pain. I'm a lie, and everything I did, everything I tried was just a desperate attempt to be something I'm not. The silence in the room seemed to swallow her words, but the truth Angela had revealed was becoming clearer by the second. She no longer knew what to do. The insecurities that had built up over the years were now overflowing, and Elena couldn't hide from herself anymore. She was lost, unsure of where she belonged, uncertain of which path to take. Hours passed as Elena remained there, immersed in her thoughts. The clock on the wall read well past midnight, but sleep was impossible. The ache in her chest only grew. The emptiness she felt seemed to consume her soul, and the one thing Angela had told her, that she needed to be honest with herself, was starting to make sense. Elena knew that to change, she needed to face the demons she had tried so hard to hide. Suddenly, as if a light had turned on inside her, Elena got up from the bed. She looked at her phone, and the temptation to text Liam was strong, but she resisted. That wasn't what she needed right now. She needed something deeper, more truthful. She couldn't live in a world of lies anymore. So, without hesitation, Elena grabbed a notebook and a pen. She sat at the desk, and with trembling hands, began to write. The words flowed like a river, without much thought. Everything she felt, all the fears, all the insecurities, were there, on that paper. She wrote about feeling inadequate, about how the pressure to live in a perfect world made her doubt herself. She wrote about the fear of not being good enough for Liam, about the constant struggle to fit into a world that always seemed one step ahead of her. I never knew who I was, and I've always been afraid to show myself, to be vulnerable. But maybe I need to be like that now. Maybe I need to show Liam who I really am, for him and for myself. The notebook was full of words, but they weren't just words of despair. They were words of release. Elena felt like she was beginning to understand what Angela meant. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to be real. And maybe, by being real, she could regain what she had always feared losing: herself. Elena took a deep breath, looking at the words she had just written. They weren't the solution to all her problems, but they were the beginning of something new, something she needed to face, not just with Liam, but with herself. It was time to confront her own insecurity and maybe, finally, allow herself to become the woman she had always wanted to be, without masks, without fear. She picked up the phone once more and this time, without hesitation, sent a message to Liam. I need to talk to you. I want to be honest about everything. As she pressed send, a sense of relief washed over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she was in control of her life. And even though fear was still present, she knew that taking this step was what she needed to truly change her life forever. She lay back down, this time with a calmer expression, feeling as if the storm inside her was beginning to quiet. The journey wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, Elena knew that true transformation would only happen when she could look in the mirror and see who she truly was. The next morning brought a faint sense of hope to Elena. Her decision to be honest with herself and with Liam finally felt like the right choice. She had taken the first step toward the truth, and that made her feel stronger. However, what she didn't know was that revealing her own vulnerability would also open the door to a confrontation with the past, one she wasn't prepared to face. As she reflected on the conversation she was going to have with Liam, trying to organize her thoughts, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found Liam standing there with a serious look on his face, his eyes distant. "Can we talk?" Liam asked, his voice calm, but with a sense of urgency that made Elena's heart race. She invited him in, still unsure of what to expect, but with a weight on her shoulders, as if she already knew that everything could change in a matter of minutes. They sat on the living room couch, where silence was thick. Neither of them knew exactly where to start. "Liam, I need you to know a few things," Elena began, trying to stay calm. "I can't keep hiding who I am. I've been trying to be someone I'm not. I have my insecurities, my flaws, and I need to be honest with you." But before she could continue, Liam interrupted. He didn't seem angry or frustrated, but something in his eyes said he was about to say something important. "I know, Elena," he said with surprising calm. "I know exactly who you are." Elena looked at him, perplexed. "What do you mean by that? How could you know? I'm opening up to you now." Liam took a deep breath and stood up from the couch, walking over to the window. He looked outside for a moment before turning back to her with an enigmatic look. "I've always known who you were, Elena. I knew you were afraid to show yourself, afraid to be real. But more than that, I knew who had been watching me from the start." The shock was instant. Elena froze in place. "What are you saying? What do you know? What are you talking about?" Liam looked at her with a serious expression, as if finally revealing what he had kept inside. "I knew about your mother-in-law. I knew my mother was testing you the entire time, and I knew that somehow it would bring us to this point. I was just waiting for the right moment to see how far you would go." The silence between them was deep. Elena felt a mix of anger, frustration, and confusion. How could he have known? How could he have allowed her to be tested in such a cruel way without telling her the truth? "You knew the whole time? You let your mother test me? How could you do that, Liam?" Elena exclaimed, her voice trembling. "I'm a human being, Liam. I'm not a pawn in some game you and your mother get to control." Liam, seeing the whirlwind of emotions taking over Elena, stepped toward her, trying to explain. "I didn't want you to go through that. I just wanted to understand how you would handle everything. I knew that my mother, despite everything, was someone who could help you grow. I knew that in the end you'd have to face your own insecurities. But I didn't ask for this, Liam. I didn't ask to be manipulated, to be a part of some test." Elena stood up, her eyes filled with angry tears. "I opened myself up to you, and what you did was put me in a vulnerable position without my consent." Liam backed away, rubbing his forehead, visibly distressed. He seemed torn by his own feelings. "I didn't know what else to do, Elena. I saw you drowning in your insecurities, and I needed to see if you were really willing to fight for us. I wanted to know if you loved me, truly loved me, without masks, without expectations." Elena was furious, but at the same time, something inside her started to settle. It was as if she was beginning to understand the truth behind his actions. She looked at Liam, her eyes now clearer, more focused. "I don't know if I can keep going like this, Liam," Elena said, the pain in her voice obvious. "I don't know if I can stay in a relationship where I'm not treated as a partner, but as a test." The tension was heavy. Elena felt the weight of her decision, and Liam was about to face the possibility of losing the woman he loved. "I know you're upset, Elena, but please understand. I didn't do this to hurt you. I just wanted to see if you were ready to be the woman you truly are. And I realized you were afraid. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of not being enough. And I just wanted you to be yourself, Liam said, the sincerity in his words clear. Elena looked at him, and for the first time, she didn't see a man trying to manipulate her, but a man just as lost as she was. She took a deep breath, and with a voice full of emotion said, I don't know if I can do this, Liam. I need time to understand everything you just told me. I need time to understand who I am. Silence once again filled the room. The world seemed to stop around them as their words hung in the air. Love, pain, and regret were all there, uncertain how to turn into something that could save the relationship. All right, Elena, Liam replied softly. I'll give you all the time you need, but please know, I'll be here, waiting for you, always. Elena looked at him for a moment longer before slowly stepping away and heading toward the door. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew that the choice she made now would change her life forever. The breeze coming through the mansion brought a feeling of both relief and pain. Elena had asked to meet with Angela in the garden, the only place where she felt she could speak honestly. She sensed that something inside her needed to be resolved, and she knew Angela might be able to help. Angela was already seated, waiting calmly. Elena approached, tense, carrying the weight of something she needed to say. I can't handle this alone anymore, Elena began, her voice trembling. I'm afraid of being insignificant, of constantly trying to please everyone, without even knowing who I truly am. Angela looked at her and, with calm wisdom, replied, I know what you're feeling. I went through the same thing. But when you accept your scars, the pain loses its power. How did you overcome it? Elena asked, her eyes full of tears. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I'm not strong, Angela said. I'm someone who learned how to deal with my weaknesses. True strength comes from accepting your imperfections and being vulnerable. Elena gave in to her pain and cried in Angela's arms. I feel so small. I'm not the woman I thought I'd become. I'm not enough for Liam. You're not weak, Elena. You're human, and that makes you strong. Face your pain, and you'll discover your power. Moved, Elena admitted. I'm afraid of what I'll find when I really look at myself, and of not being loved the way I need to be. You will be loved, Elena, but only when you love yourself first. True love begins within us, Angela replied firmly. Elena wiped away her tears, and for the first time, she knew that change started within her. Thank you, Angela. Now I know what I need to do. And what are you going to do, dear? Angela asked with a gentle smile. I'm going to be honest with myself. When I accept who I am, I'll be able to open up to Liam, not as the woman he expects, but as the woman I truly am. The sun was setting, and the garden reflected the silent transformation happening inside Elena. The future was still uncertain, but she knew she had taken the first step toward the freedom she had longed for. The Bradford mansion was quiet, something rare in such a usually busy place. Elena, trying to process her inner transformation after speaking with Angela, sensed that something big was about to happen. Liam entered, pale and visibly tense. Liam, what's going on? Elena asked, noticing the tension in his face. He answered, anger mixed with confusion. We have a bigger problem than I thought. Someone in our family is betraying me. Who's betraying you? What's happening? Elena asked, shocked. Liam slammed his hand on the table and revealed, It's Samuel. He's sabotaging our company and making deals with our competitors to take over our market share. Eleanor was speechless. But Samuel? He's always been loyal to you, Liam. How is this possible? I don't know who I can trust anymore, He was my partner, my ally, Liam said, visibly hurt. Angela entered, sensing the weight of the conversation, and Liam, now more drained, explained, Samuel is trying to destroy our company. Only I, and now you, Mom, know about it. Angela, shocked, responded, This can't be happening. We're not going to let this destroy our family. Liam, in desperation, said, If this gets out of control, we could lose everything, the company, our reputation. What will happen to Elena and me? Angela, with determination, stepped closer and said, We're not going to let that happen. We'll fight. We'll protect our family. Liam looked at her with a flicker of renewed hope. Eleanor, moved by Liam's pain, said, I'm with you. Together, we'll face this. Together, we'll uncover the truth. Angela looked at her with surprise and approval. Yes, we will, Eleanor. Together. The fight for the Bradford family's survival was just beginning. The danger wasn't only coming from the outside, but also from the deep wounds within them, and Samuel's betrayal would be the start of a crisis that would change everything. The Bradford home, once filled with tension, now breathed a silence of reflection. The crisis was easing, but the wound caused by Samuel still ran deep. However, there was a new energy in the air, stronger than the pain. Liam, Elena, and Angela were gathered, aware that the real battle wasn't about saving the company, but about rebuilding trust and family love. Elena moved closer to Liam with a regretful but determined look. I know I wasn't ready, but now I see that what really matters isn't outside expectations. What matters is what we build together. I want to be with you, and with our family. Liam, touched, replied, I want that too, but trust has to be rebuilt, No matter what's happened, I need to believe in you, just like you need to believe in me. Angela, beside them, added with wisdom, Your choice is a difficult one, but it's about more than saving a business. It's about rebuilding trust and love, and you have the strength to do it. Eleanor, more resolute, said, I don't want to live to please others anymore. I want to be honest, with Liam and with myself. If we don't face this now, we'll lose our chance to be happy. Liam held her hand, smiling. I'm with you. Without trust, what do we really have? Angela smiled, seeing that they were finally beginning to understand. Let's face this together. Samuel will pay for what he did, but what matters now is how we, as a family, will overcome it. The future is ahead of us, not behind. The decision had been made. They would fight to recover the company and rebuild the family. The door opened, interrupting the moment, and the lawyers walked in. Liam stood up, determined. Now it's time to act. We'll face this crisis together. Nothing will tear us apart again. Angela and Elena also stood, both knowing that together they would face the battle for their family's survival. The fate of the company was at stake, but more importantly, the future of the family was being rebuilt on the pillars of trust, love, and unbreakable unity. The sun set gently, bringing a sense of serenity to the Bradford mansion, now undergoing a quiet transformation. The crisis had come to an end, but everyone knew the true challenge was still ahead. The family, gathered in the living room, was silent, but the unity was undeniable. Angela, standing beside Liam and Elena, felt it was time to speak. This moment matters to me, Angela said, her voice firm but full of love. What truly matters isn't money or power, but what we carry inside. Real strength comes from the courage to love, to forgive, and most of all, to sacrifice for the ones we love. She paused, then continued with a determined expression. I sold my share of the company to push Samuel out. What's at stake isn't our wealth, it's our family. Our legacy, is the love we have for one another." The shock was immediate. Liam and Eleanor stood frozen. Angela had sacrificed her own security to protect the family. "You did what?" Liam asked, stunned. "I did what needed to be done," Angela replied calmly. "What matters now isn't what we lost, but what we gained. What I wanted most was to see you united and strong." Elena, moved, couldn't hold back her tears and hugged Angela, understanding the depth of her love for the family. "You gave us more than a lesson. You gave us the chance to become better. Together." Still in shock, Liam approached Angela and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I didn't know you had that in you. You showed us what strength really means. Now I get it. The money and the company don't matter. What matters is what we have between us." Angela smiled, knowing the decision had been made and that the change had happened. The true lesson had been learned. Love, trust, and sacrifice are the real foundation of a family. The Bradford legacy would now be measured by the bond between them, not by material wealth. So, what did you think of this story? Leave a comment below with a score from 0 to 10. I'd really love to hear your opinion. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a new video. And before you go, I've got another emotional story lined up that will touch your heart even more. Stay tuned.